Have you ever faced a choice where doing the right thing cost you dearly? Maybe it meant losing a job, a friendship, or even your reputation. Genesis 39 tells us about Joseph, far from home, falsely accused, and imprisoned. Yet, through it all, he chose integrity over compromise. And here's the question: why is integrity worth more than comfort? Why is loyalty to God more valuable than escaping consequences? That's what we're diving into today. Joseph's story begins with betrayal. Sold by his own brothers, taken to Egypt, and placed in Potiphar's household. And just when things begin looking up, temptation strikes. Genesis 39, 6-7 says, "Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, 'Come to bed with me.'" Temptation always comes when we least expect it, and it often appeals to our natural desires. Yet Joseph refuses. He says in verse 9, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Notice this: Joseph doesn't just see it as betrayal of Potiphar. He sees it as sin against God himself. Charles Spurgeon once wrote, "Integrity is to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Character is who you are in the dark." Genesis 39, 10-12 says, "And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, 'Lie with me.' But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house." Joseph doesn't reason with temptation. He flees. A.W. Tozer reminds us, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them." Temptation loses its power when we choose obedience over self-justification. Potiphar's wife lies. Joseph is falsely accused, and instead of being rewarded for his righteousness, Joseph is imprisoned. Genesis 39, 20-21 tells the rest of the story. "So Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the warden." Integrity may cost us in the short term, but it never removes God's presence. John Calvin wrote, "We must remember that God does not regard us as righteous on account of our works, but because we have Christ's righteousness input to us." Joseph's prison wasn't the end of his story, because God was weaving something greater. R.C. Sproul said, There is no maverick molecule if God is sovereign. Not even Joseph's prison sentence was outside God's providence. Romans 8:28 echoes this truth. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Even in false accusations, even in betrayal, even in prison, God is at work. Joseph's integrity is not just about his personal purity. It was his witness. Vadi Bakum once said, "The world is watching how we respond when we're wronged. Our response may be the loudest sermon we ever preach." Joseph preached a silent sermon with his actions. He refused to compromise, even when compromise could have meant freedom. So what does this mean for us? First, temptation is constant. Like Joseph, we face daily opportunities to compromise. The question is, will we see sin as primarily against God? Second, integrity is costly. Doing the right thing doesn't always lead to immediate blessing. Sometimes it leads to loss, reputation damage, or even persecution. And finally, third, God's presence is greater than man's approval. Joseph lost his freedom, but he never lost God. C.S. Lewis once observed, "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." That's Joseph's life in Genesis 39. The world tells us that compromise is wise, that cutting corners is survival, that deceit is sometimes necessary. But Joseph's story tells us something far different. It is better to suffer for integrity than to succeed through compromise. So here's the question for you. What would it look like to choose integrity, no matter the cost? Like Joseph, you may face false accusations. You may even face suffering, but you will never face it alone, because the Lord is with you. May God keep you and bless you.